Mr Chair.
I call Leanne Dalzell.
I rise to speak to part 2, entitled Replacement of Governing Body of ECAN. Mr Speaker, Mr Chairman, I'm rather concerned about the way the government has referred to some of their own actions in the past, or some of our actions in the past, and without mentioning the most obvious one. But this part here actually goes through the technical details of the replacement of ECAN, and I just want to just talk about the question about the amount of notice, essentially, that people are being given with respect to what's happening with their role. So we got about a month's notice to the elected members of ECAN, and I think that reminds me of the approach that an earlier national government took when they sacked every member of every area health board overnight during the urgency that followed the budget that even the Minister of Finance described as the mother of all budgets. And I was in Parliament at that time, and I recall the debate incredibly clearly because I knew people who were on area health boards from a range of political spectrums, but across the political spectrum, from a range of different political backgrounds, and many of them actually had budgeted for the fact that they were undertaking that work as elected members of the Area Health Board. They had no idea that this was going to happen, and as a result a number of people had actually resigned permanent positions, full-time jobs, in order to devote their energy and attention to their work on the Area Health Board, and completely out of the blue they were all sacked. Now, then there was the rather strange situation where the government of the day, the Honourable Simon Upton, I remember this as if it were yesterday because it kind of feels there's a sense of déjà vu happening here. The Green and White Paper on Health, which was released at the same time as the 1991 budget, which signalled the most radical reform in health this country had ever seen. So before the consultation had even begun, National had decided that elected members would have no part in the future of New Zealand's health system. So it's a bit ironic, really, because we're not allowed to use other words in this House, it's a bit ironic that we have the Minister referring to well, in fact, he actually asked the Honourable Ruth Dyson and myself where we were when Helen Clark sacked the Auckland Area Health Board, and we said we weren't here, and he said, well, it's not relevant then, that you're saying that it's not relevant because anything that happened before one arrived in this Parliament didn't count. But he actually asked us where we were. Well, we weren't here, so I don't know what sort of answer he expected to elicit from that response. He wasn't here either because he was elected the same year I was, and probably recalls these debates very, very clearly as well, because that was the longest period of time that Parliament had been in urgency. In fact, we were called back the following Monday, and it was the first time since the Second World War that Parliament had sat on a Monday. So we've had this situation before. And where is that relevant to this Part 2? Well, I just want to refer members to Clause 9 of the bill. And it says, elected members cease to hold office on close of day before replacement day. On the close of the day before the replacement day, the elected members of ECAN then holding office, the elected members, cease to hold office. This section applies no matter what the Local Electoral Act 2001 or the Local Government Act 2002 may say. And thirdly, an elected member is not entitled to any compensation or other payment or benefit for the loss of office. And that's pretty much exactly the clause that went into the health amendments that came around after during the course of the urgency debate after the 1991 budget was presented to this House. And it was that element of an elected member is not entitled to any compensation or other payment or benefit for the loss of office. It certainly caused problems from one end of the country to the other, because people had actually relied on having an income from the role that they were playing on their DHB. Now, the individual members of ECAN, I am not sure what their circumstances are, but I have to say that to get 1 month's notice that the position that you have been democratically elected to hold being cancelled like that cannot be anything other than a breach of natural justice, Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Chairman, I think that it is important that we debate these issues because there are people's interests that are being affected by the way that this legislation is being worked through. Then we come to the question of the timing of all of this. So what is the timing that this bill sets out? It says that the responsible ministers must determine, well, the irresponsible ministers might have been a good amendment for that one, must determine the replacement day and give notice of it in the Gazette and to the elected members of ECAN. Well, we heard from the Minister yesterday that we're actually looking for the 1st of May. Well, I think that's kind of an ironic day because that, of course, is International Workers' Day, and although these aren't employees of ECAN in any way, shape or form, those that have made their commitments based on the income that they have been receiving, it obviously doesn't seem to faze the Minister whatsoever. And in fact, they're going to pay the commissioners, as I understand it, significantly more than the ECAN councillors are being paid because, of course, they will be employed on a commission as opposed to elected to represent the democratic interests of the Canterbury region. And the reason that, and I want to also talk about the timing about how long this lasts for, because of course this has to continue on until we get to the the 2010 election for members of ECAN is deferred by clause 22, and then members of ECAN elected at the next election comes into effect on come into office on the resumption day. So the resumption day, that was the word that I was looking for, relates to the period at which this is overturned, or the 2013 election, as I understand it, 2013 election of local bodies, whichever comes first. The problem is that I suspect that the reason for this is because the government's decided to defer the decision they've already made to cancel regional government in Canterbury, and I personally believe to cancel regional government across New Zealand, as we saw with the super city in Auckland. This is really the runner-up of a runner-up to what is about to happen right across the country. But this government doesn't want that to be an election issue next year for the general election, and that's why I believe this has been chosen as the process in this particular way. Because if we actually honestly took this out to a broad consultative process that included this bill going to a select committee, so that those councillors that actually put themselves up for election, and whether I agree with their politics or not, I actually admire people that are prepared to put themselves forward for some of these roles. Sometimes ECAN can be a bit of a thankless task, and of course it has a reputation. A lot of anecdote has driven the report, as I've already referred to once in this House, and that is hard for people to be able to take on these particular roles. But in this particular case, I actually think that the government has not allowed those people to have a public say. They should be able to be held to account within their own constituency. There should be a select committee meeting down in Canterbury now and actually travelling throughout the region and letting those who stood for election and were successful in that regard to have their say about what has really gone on in this particular case. And maybe the individual councils could actually be asked to debate the issues as councils and not just allow the mayors and the chief executives to be the only ones who are entitled to express an opinion with respect to what's appropriate in terms of our regional democracy. And that's what I keep coming back to. I honestly believe that the government has deliberately made this decision at this time, used the urgency motion, cloaked it in secrecy up until this point, and then simply allowed for a ramming through of a process that destroys regional democracy in the Canterbury region. And I believe that this is a promise of things to come. And I believe this government has made a decision, and unfortunately the Minister of Local Government hasn't taken a call yet on this today, and I'm hoping that he will get up and take a call on this, because